We live in a time where masculinity is shamed and men don't know what it means to be a man. As a pastor and counselor, I've spent the better part of my life equipping and training others. My goal with this show is to translate my hard-earned experience into tools and tactics to help you become stronger as a man. This is the BraveCo podcast. I'm your host, Jason Vellet. Welcome back to the BraveCo podcast, BraveCo men. We are on, I was going to say a beautiful sunny day, but that was yesterday.
That is incorrect today.
It's a rainy day, but I am excited to have my friend Aaron Zint here. If you have been following the BraveCo podcast for almost any amount of time, you've seen Aaron and I on here. He comes in once a month. Because I love what Aaron carries. So we always just dive into a bunch of topics that are fun for us. He does a lot in building men. He oversees and runs our men's purity group, which we don't call it that, but I don't want to correct it. He also is a master at teaching habits and healthy habits, helping men and women create healthy habits. They have their own personal ministry called Habit Lab. We've never talked about it on here, but I'm going to let you talk about it today.
That's great.
Aaron also does a lot of coaching, and listen, all right, he's just a cool guy, and I don't want to have to prove that anymore. So Aaron's an awesome guy. Aaron, thanks for coming on today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Today, we want to talk about crushing passivity.
Mm-hmm.
And man, I think passivity is one of those things that we all struggle with in life at different times.
Mm-hmm.
And whether you've reached a high level of success or you've never found very much success, all of us come up against passivity. And we'd even say that passivity was one of the first sins of man, right? Is Adam standing there with Eve. It says that they're like shoulder to shoulder, and he's watching the devil talk to Eve. And if you guys remember, God didn't talk to Eve about what was right and wrong. God talked to Adam about what was right and wrong. God said, Adam, this is what you can eat. Adam, this is what you can do. Adam. And so Adam's standing there and he's watching Eve talk to the serpent. And instead of going, whoa, hey, this is a real bad idea.
Yeah.
We're not supposed to eat this fruit. I talked to God about it personally. We were on a walk over there by that yellow rock, and he said, hey, Adam, you can eat whatever you want, but don't eat the fruit. He doesn't do that.
No.
He stands by and he watches his wife partake, and then he takes it from her.
And then he blames it on her.
But then he blames it on her. Like classic, a man.
Classic.
Classic man.
Yeah.
It's the woman that you gave me.
Yeah.
And that's passivity, right? Like passivity always leads us to a place where we end up regretting whatever it is, right? And so because it's so common though, I think oftentimes we feel so much shame around our inability to whatever, take action, communicate, to not be passive. And I see a lot of men who don't feel strong because passivity is running their life. I will also say this, I know it's a long intro, but I'm trying to set us up. There's a lot of personalities that look less passive.
Right.
They look less passive.
Yeah. Their passivity shows up in more socially acceptable, powerful, quote unquote, looking ways.
Yeah. And so it's easy as a man to look at another guy who's quote unquote taking the bull by the horns and charging at life. And that can be great. You know, it can also, passivity has little to do with making a reckless decision and being a bully and being dominant. The alpha male that's not the guy who's the happiest in this world.
Right.
And so I do want to address that a little just for a second, because I think we look at guys that are alpha male type men and we go, wow, that guy feels super powerful and he's going somewhere. It's like, well, oftentimes they feel really powerless. That's why they're alpha male.
Yeah.
And they go a lot of places that aren't super helpful.
Mhm.
That's not what I'm talking about.
Yep.
I'm not talking about freaking make a decision and be an alpha male and just claw your way to the top.
Yeah.
I'm talking about learning how to be decisive,
Mhm.
learning how to make healthy decisions, learning how to have courage, let your yes be your yes, to even follow through.
Yeah.
And accomplish the tasks and the goals that you've set out, to be a decisive, intentional man. That's what we're talking about today.
Yeah. I would define passivity as anytime that there's avoidance in your life. Avoidance, and for some of the guys who are on the more aggressive, challenging kind of personality types who love a good fight, who love a good tussle.
Yeah.
I have buddies who are like that. And so my passivity will tend to show up. The things I avoid are hard conversations typically. So that could look like your classic passivity. For these guys who love hard conversations, the passivity for them tends to show up in ways that they avoid owning mistakes, avoid looking weak, avoid having to have vulnerable conversations, not hard conversations, but for them, really difficult is vulnerability. So passivity is pretty much anywhere in your life you're avoiding because typically it's because of fear. Like I don't know anybody who avoids something that they're not afraid of. And so, and we will go after it to kind of combat passivity. You named some of those key things like intentionality, courage. Passivity shows up in how we might disengage or dissociate when we get home from work and we want to check out and I got too much going on and the kids are like, and so we just kind of disengage mentally, disengage emotionally from the people in our life. That's a way that we avoid having to, expend energy that it doesn't feel like we have. So I would say intentionality, courage, engagement, are some of the key things that combat passivity that will actually wind up crushing passivity. And when we say crushing passivity, we don't mean like, hey, once you kill this thing, it's gone forever.
Yeah.
There's more and more opportunity, but honestly, that's the brilliant thing about like anytime there is passivity, it's more revelation into the things that are going on in your heart that need attention.
Yeah.
That things that we are avoiding because, oh, there's some fear there. Why is there fear there? What belief system, what emotions are happening below the surface that need some attention so that I can go crush it, even if I am scared at the same time.
Yeah, 100%. I like that. For me, I think the places that I become passive most have to do with when I feel overwhelmed.
Okay, yeah.
And so like I often, a good example could be, I want to launch a new program, or I want to write a book, or probably those two areas in my life. I've found that like I delay, not necessarily because I'm afraid as the root. I think because I'm overwhelmed. I don't know where to start.
Sure.
And I don't know how to do all the pieces. And so sometimes if I don't know how to do all the pieces, then I'll just go,
yeah,
I don't want to do it.
Can't figure that out.
Yeah, it's too complicated. It's too complex, or I don't know where to start.
Yeah.
And I've caught myself, in the recent past, I've caught myself going, because I want to know the full picture before I start, I feel so overwhelmed because it's almost impossible to know the full picture. So I don't do it.
Yep.
And that's been, then I wait like 5-6 months and then I start to feel miserable. And so I've seen that in a great example is my finances.
Okay.
Let's just talk about me and my finances. I've told this story several times, but it's applicable to here. So back in March last year, or no, May of 2023, had $1,000 left in my bank account, right? And, which is a really painful experience. It's like, before that, I didn't have a great financial plan. I had a whole bunch of things that I knew I needed to be working on, but I kept going like, I don't really know how to do that. I'm waiting for someone to tell me how to do it.
I hope this will work out.
I'm waiting for someone else to make it easy for me. I talked to a couple friends about how to do some stuff. All of a sudden I got to a point where, wow, this is really painful and scary. I only have $1,000. I don't know where money's going to come from. Am I going to have to borrow it from my dad? And I'm in trouble. So all of a sudden I had to go like, okay, I have to solve this problem. And it's funny what you do when you have to solve a problem is you start with going, okay, I don't care if I know the full picture. I just have to get some money in the bank.
Yeah. I have to take a step in a direction.
Right. Because I'm desperate.
Yeah.
And so I ended up doing that. And long story short, like I'm well on my way to solving that issue. I wish I would have taken the advice that we're going to give you today and recognized this is an area of your life that's really important to you, that's going to bring a big return, that's going to be worth your effort.
Yeah.
And you need to figure it out. And I think there are other places in our life when I look at passivity that don't necessarily bring a big return. I don't necessarily have to figure out right away.
Sure. Yeah.
But then there are certain areas, like I would say a lot of people's marriages is an area, like just stop your truck for a second and go, how powerful do I feel in my marriage, raising kids, my business or finances, my relationships, and myself. Those are really the categories that passivity is going to come up and hurt you. And then you can start to look at like, okay, in my marriage, why am I being passive? In my business or finances, what's creating the passivity? In my relationship with my kids, being a dad, what is it? It's like, oh, I literally don't know how to do it.
Yeah.
I don't have any framework for it. But being able to identify, I think, is the first part to pulling yourself out of this passive place, right? To begin to start taking a step.
So step one, what I'm hearing you say is you actually identify I'm being passive in this area. Because it could be easy to go like, yeah, I need to work on that, or I want to work on that, or I'm working on that, when really you're working on it, quote unquote, is worrying about it.
Yeah.
And so identifying I'm being passive in my marriage, I'm being passive in my parenting. And one of the ways that I know that I identify it for myself is, where do I feel stuck?
Yeah.
Any place that I feel stuck, there's an area of passivity that needs attention. So I can go, okay, I feel stuck. I feel stuck in my business. Okay, where am I being passive? And even this week, as I brought that up to my small group of guys that I meet with weekly, they gave me really good homework. They're like, okay, here's a step, because I'm 100% in the same way. I want to have this all figured out, and then then I will dive in head first, which is a really good rationalization for doing nothing.
Yeah, that's true.
Because having it all figured out, I don't know how often that actually happens unless somebody else does it for you, and then it's not really your thing. So in my marriage, when I feel stuck, it's usually like, well, there's something we just can't get past. And so I think for any guy listening, identify what category in my life do I feel stuck? And you go, okay, there is some passivity there. What am I avoiding because I either feel overwhelmed, don't know where to start, I have a lot of fear there, or it just seems really uncomfortable. Like I may not be scared of it. It just sounds like a lot of hard work. I don't know if I want to do that.
Like cleaning the garage.
Oh yeah. Like I'm not scared of doing that. I just don't want to. Like it just sounds like a lot. And yet, that this garage has stayed in its current state for 6 months because because of all manner of things. So going, hey, I'm being passive with taking good care of my house, whatever that is. So identifying it, step one. I think step two, and this is where habit, actually, before I touch on the deep habit work, I do want to say that when you recognize that you're being passive in an area, it can be easy to go to shame, and it's almost like a masculine shame to go like, just freaking do it, bro. Come on. Yeah, like, Jack, let's do this. Where you psych yourself up, you smack each other, and then you're like, ah. And that can be helpful when you're like going to jump off a cliff into some water, or you're going to do something in sports. But when it comes to your marriage, like, bro, just do the thing.
Get in there and have that conversation with her.
Yeah. Go on. Okay. And I run inside, and that doesn't work as well.
No.
And so I think a good step is, once you recognize it, know that it's there for a reason. I believe that the majority of things that we avoid, we mentioned some things, are there because we're avoiding them in order to protect ourselves in some way. What am I protecting myself from? Well, when it comes to having a hard conversation with my wife, well, I'm afraid that this is going to result in this, and it's going to be more painful. I'm actually avoiding pain. I'm not avoiding having a hard conversation. I'm avoiding the disconnection that I think is inevitably going to happen.
Yep.
I'm not avoiding my garage because I like suck as a human being and suck at cleaning. I actually realized that the different things in my garage require a place to be put. I don't have a place to put those.
Yeah.
And so
it's overwhelming.
Yeah, you start to look at, there's good reasons behind this. So we don't want to shame ourselves into just jumping in. I actually want to look at those things and go, there's a good reason why. Now, good, I can put in air quotes. I'm going to do a lot of air quotes on this podcast, but there's a good reason why I haven't attacked this thing yet. It's good to identify those, because only then can you start to actually build some habits and build some small steps into your life to address all of that. So step 1, identify where you're being passive. Step 2, ask the questions. Hey, what is it that I'm actually avoiding? What are the 10 steps that it actually requires for me to clean my garage? It actually requires that I get a shelf up to put the stuff that's all on the floor. Okay, so I actually need to buy a shelf first. Some of the stuff, or the conversation with my wife, or talking to my kids about sex. Like, I know I need to do that. They're getting to that age. So what am I afraid of? Well, I'm afraid I don't actually know what to say. Okay. Does anybody know what to say about this?
Yeah.
Actually, there's probably billions of Google search results about how to talk to your kids about this. I know for sure Moral Revolution does. Yep. I know for sure, like, I'm around a lot of people who know how to do this stuff. I can actually look this stuff up. So maybe step 1 is not have the conversation. Step 1 is, I'm afraid I don't know what to say. Okay. Step 1, research how do people talk to their kids about sex? Step 1, having a hard conversation with my wife. I have to actually know what I'm feeling and discover that maybe I need to process that with a friend before I dive in and just kind of vomit all over my wife. So you want to start to identify, there are reasons I'm avoiding this. There's things underneath. Let me look at those so I know what steps to take. A lot of times the thing we're avoiding, there's usually like 10 steps underneath that can be addressed, that will give me the courage, give me the things I need to take those steps forward. And those can be the steps forward that you need. Anything in here before I dive into the habits part?
Well, yeah, I like it. To me, I love knowing and being really conscious of the fact that I'm avoiding right now. That's what's happening. Because to me, like, now I have all the power.
Yeah.
Now I'm going to make a conscious decision.
Mm-hmm.
Do I want to continue to avoid, or do I want to solve this?
Mm-hmm.
Because I have to solve. I have something that I can solve.
Yeah. And
I think that to me is a massive key, going from I'm just an autopilot avoiding this to like, and we can't camp here for too long, but making this decision of like, okay, I do want to solve this. Mm-hmm. This is important. This is going to bring me a return. This is helpful in my life. And then going into why do I avoid this in my life? Well, I avoid it because I'm not actually equipped. Mm-hmm. I avoid it because it's painful. I avoid it because whatever it is. And therefore, do I know, then the next question to me is, do I know how to solve it? Mm-hmm. And starting to go through, like you were saying, who are the experts? Is it Moral Revolution? Is it John Gottman for marriage stuff? Is it whatever?
Yeah.
Is there a way that I can really solve this if I put my mind to it? Or do I not know how to solve it and I need to contact somebody or get more information.
Yeah. You have to figure that stuff out. When it comes to habits, one of the biggest things, my wife and I have a business called the Habit Lab. My wife is the person who teaches and does all the stuff. She has a podcast called the Habit Lab.
And you guys do a 6-week course?
Hers is it's either 8 or 10. I actually can't remember at this point.
That's cool.
But it's a master class on it.
Lauren did the Habit Lab and it was awesome. So if you guys go over to
thehabitlab.org.
Yeah. Thehabitlab.org, you guys can check out the Habit Lab.
So in all the stuff that we do, this phrase keeps coming up over and over and over that my wife Jen has been saying is little bits of better over a long period of time. And
bits of better over a long period of time.
Right.
It's great.
Versus what feels sexy and what feels what we all really want is little bit of effort, gigantic results, or I'm going to crush this workout, this diet so that I can look good by, in 2 months, without creating a lifestyle of fitness and health. And so we are all about this big bang, all or nothing kind of mentality. And getting into the mentality of little bits of better over a long period of time looks like we can create a lifestyle that is different versus I can create a flash in the pan that while it feels good when it flashes, then it's gone. And I'm in the same place or sometimes worse than I was before. So the core idea behind attacking these areas of passivity in your life is understanding I can take little steps. I can take small steps. And, James Clear's book, Atomic Habits, the word atomic was meant to give you this idea that you need to shrink this down really small. There's another great book called Tiny Habits by, I forget his name, BJ something, Fogg. Fogg.
Tiny Habits was my favorite of the two.
100%. Atomic Habits was the pithy way of saying this. Tiny Habits was the way of diving in deep to it. And in these books, basically what they said is hey, the reason why most people don't take a step forward is because they're thinking the step forward I need to take is 20 feet of a step. I need to do a long jump to take that first step. And they go, no. Even if you somehow could do that, even if it was only 6 feet, you're expending so much energy, getting so little return because this isn't how lifelong transformation happens. This isn't how behavior change happens. This is how you get one thing done. But if you want to get 100 things done, it takes these little steps. So back to the area of passivity, we discover an area that needs a step. And we go, I'm going to do 5 minutes of action towards this.
Can you tell us about your ab workout?
Yeah, my ab workout is now 10 minutes. So here's my movement workout. It was 2022 in December, and I go.
It was a dark night. It was 2022.
It was raining outside.
Aaron was. I was
looking
in
the mirror,
and he was thinking to himself, "My body is so out of shape. What kind of man am I?" Now, here's his solution to that. Okay, I've set you up
here's
perfectly.
The solution to that. I go, okay, what little things am I willing to do? Because I have done the big epic workouts that I did for 45 minutes a day for 5 days a week. And I got great results for those 3 weeks that I did that.
Yeah.
That was the entirety of it. So I go, okay, what can I do? I already were well versed in now how to do small habits. And so
because you teach this stuff.
Because we teach this stuff, and I go, I should probably live the stuff that I tell people to do. So I go, okay, I could do 10 minutes of movement a day, not workout, not resistance training, not whatever, movement. So that was literally, I'm going to walk. Now, my wife did one better because 10 minutes is actually a lot when it comes to small habits. She goes, I'm going to walk to the end of the street, tap the street sign, and walk back. And that was her movement for the day.
Right away, my brain wants to make a joke about her.
Yeah. Well, what is the joke that you want to make? Because
it's just like, oh, that's hard,
oh
it's just
yeah, like, oh wow. But
Yeah.
that's exactly it. It's so not sexy. But cut to 360, probably 363 days in 2023 that my wife did a 30-minute workout, started from that sign.
I know, it's amazing.
Yeah.
I'm fully bought into
We got, but this is that, that joke that you want to make is exactly what everyone's thinking. Because we go like, what's the point of doing something small? Well, the point is lifelong transformational change.
Can I explain something too?
Please.
So what happens in our brains is when January comes, actually when December comes, right? And you just got done binging all this food from the holidays. You had Thanksgiving that came like a hammer. Christmas was just massive excuses for you. And now you're creeping up towards January and you are in the type of shape that you hate seeing yourself in, and we do these things where we say like, this is the year I'm going to make these New Year's resolutions. And inside of yourself, the challenge is also you go like, oh, I don't know that I can do it, but I'm going to do it. Right. You got this Jekyll and Hyde thing going on. Then you wake up in January. First, in Christmas, you get a whole bunch of workout gear and stuff like that, right? Because you're on this momentum train.
Yeah.
You're riding this train of momentum, and I'm going to work out. I'm going to be this healthy guy. I'm going to do this thing. I'm going to squat like I used to squat in 2008. And what happens is you order the workout clothes, you get the gym membership, you show up. Well, you're 40 freaking 3 years old and you haven't done this for a long time. And you get that greeting, that hello, that's the stench of sweat, the Stairmaster's kicking your butt. You don't really know the workouts anymore because you haven't done them in a long time. So it's very uncomfortable to go. You don't look great because your legs are pasty white or whatever color yours are. And you do that for 1 or 2, 3 days a week. And it becomes very inconvenient because 5:30 a.m. or 6 o'clock in the morning, you got to, you're not used to making breakfast. And what happens, listen, this is the science, is it's such a hard barrier to entry that you can do it for a week.
Yeah.
You can do it for 2 weeks. But because the cost is so high, as soon as that momentum starts to drop, the barrier to entry is so high that you no longer do it. Because it's not a habit. Yeah. What you have is you have hope and you have desire, but you don't have a habit. And it's so steep that that most people don't consistently get over the threshold for long enough that it becomes easy. It becomes just a part of your routine. It becomes like, this is who I am, a part of your identity, which is where we'll eventually go. Right. I am somebody who works out. The pain that I feel is going towards my future. I'm strong. This is who I am. I might even teach a class in this. People follow me. That's where we all want to go in whatever area, marriage, these areas that we avoid. But if you start too big, yes, you'll be able to do it. And you'll think that you beat the odds because you're on week 2 of crushing it. But what happens is your momentum, your motivation begins to slow, because guess what happens when you look week 3 in the mirror?
There's nothing.
You don't see anything different at all. It takes week 15 to see like, oh, something's happening.
Willpower to last me week 15.
You don't. And so if you start very small, touching the road sign, getting out, or just staying on the example of gym clothes, or sorry, of working out. I go and buy gym clothes and I fold them and put them on the floor. I make them ready. And then I wake myself up, right? At 6:30 in the morning. I don't even have to go to the gym. I wake myself up. I put on the clothes. I go make breakfast. That's a win.
That's it.
It's ridiculous. It is so ridiculous, but it's
offensive.
It is.
And you go like, well, that won't do anything. And you go, yeah, it won't actually get you buff, but it will in 3 years. And here's why, is because you are building something into your lifestyle and your brain that you don't need willpower for. This very finite resource.
It's amazing.
finite resource.
Yes.
So we don't want to tax our willpower until that thing becomes regular, until it becomes deeply embedded in our brain. There's a place in your brain called the basal ganglia that is where our habits live. You know, when you drive home and you're like, I don't even know how I just got home. I haven't even been paying attention.
Your basal ganglia has been working.
Yeah, it's been crushing it inside your head. And so, but that we don't store things into that part of our brain until they are a regular part. So if we can store, I get up and put my gym clothes on, which is the necessary first step to a 1 hour crushing it workout.
Yep.
Until I get that part dialed in, I will run out of willpower. So I keep doing that little thing over and over. Now, habits get upgraded as you go along, but you have to start small until they're a part of your normal routine. Mine was 10 minutes of movement, and I thought, okay, it may have started at 5. I don't remember, but regardless, I did yoga.
It was a laughable amount.
It was a laughable amount, especially for what I knew I wanted. At first it was like, I want results in summer. However, it began to change to an identity thing. I actually want to I'm becoming a man who invests in his body. And it started off as 10 minutes of yoga. That's not doing anything for anybody really, other than like, oh, I feel a little peaceful. I stretched.
Yeah.
But the reason I chose that is because that for me felt like nothing. It felt like I was accomplishing nothing except building consistency. And this is the greatest thing that I think is in Atomic Habits that just sounded like, oh, that was a clever saying, but I think is really the crux of a lot of this. We have to standardize before we optimize. We have to lay the path before we can go cruising down that path.
I like that.
And so me putting doing stretching in the morning was me standardizing movement in my life, standardizing it in the morning. And then at some point I was like, you know what? I can do it. I'll do an ab workout. That doesn't sound that hard. So I found a YouTube video, 10-minute abs, and it was too hard. So I picked a easier 10-minute ab. So I said, okay, I need somebody who is like less intense
painful
than this guy. Because I knew if I started with that, like I could do it one day, but by day 5, I'm like, screw this. So I do an easy 5-minute ab work or 10-minute ab workout. And then I go, you know what? I'm going to do an every other day, like yoga and then ab. And then eventually it got to this, probably like cut to 3 months later, I'm doing 10 minutes of ab every day. And I'm like, oh, this actually works. I get up. Here's my thing. I get up. I walk downstairs. I pulled my yoga mat out. I roll it out onto the floor. That is the thing that I standardized right there. And then I go lay down on that mat. And then I start with the stretch. And I'm like, I could do this all day. But then I go like, okay, here's the ab part. What that turned into eventually was I did 10 minutes of abs. I did 10 minutes of like upper body. Cut to that summer, I was looking fly. It was great. Guess what changed later after summer was over? Like I go, oh man, I don't have as much motivation to keep up these pectorals and these abs. But I didn't want the habit to die. So I went back to what was the standard part in the beginning. I had a gold level version of this and I went down to this bronze level version, but I kept it alive. I kept the consistency alive. And so what I did, I went back to 10 minutes of yoga a day, but guess what I kept alive is that 10 minutes of movement. Cut to a couple months later, I do a sprint triathlon. First time I've ever done anything like that in my life. A sprint triathlon is a easier version of a triathlon.
Okay.
But that 10 minutes of movement actually set me up to be able to prep for that. After that was over, I went back to yoga for a little bit. And then I got back into, right now I'm in the 10-minute abs. And then I kind of alternate between that and doing an upper body. And
because we got summer coming.
And because we got summer coming, I haven't gone to 20 minutes, but I've got 10 minutes of movement built into my life right now that I can optimize at some point in the future.
Yeah.
But I'm building, and what I have right now, my identity statement here around this is I'm the kind of man who invests in his body. And so we can take that into any realm that, like when it comes to marriage, if you're struggling in your marriage, you're probably pretty disconnected. There could be like, I don't know, I don't feel connected to my wife, so I don't know how to have hard conversations. What if you did a 1-minute activity every day? Like you actually laid the foundation for connection in your marriage. What if instead of having this giant sex talk with your kids that you've been dreading, what if you actually have a 5-minute conversation with your kids that is about something they enjoy and you lay the foundation there so you build connection, you build trust? What if doing these big, gigantic things start with these really tiny
Yeah.
steps.
To me, it's like, what if you, let's go to the sex talk with kids. What if you got on morerevolution.com and all you did was purchase the book that taught you how, right? And then the next week, just read one page a night.
Page. Yep.
Not one chapter a night, one page a night. And you just did that for a while. And then eventually you could read, 2 pages and then you go back to highlight, okay, what would be helpful for my kids?
Right.
Like it really is about starting small and taking those small steps in order to get you to really where you want to go. Because yes, we all could crush something just by shaming ourselves once. But the problem is because you haven't created a habit. And to me, it's not just the habit of how to do something.
Yeah.
Like, it's not just, oh, I'm going to do 10-minute abs. Once you start to learn that you can do hard things and you've learned how to learn.
Yeah.
Now I can attach that same process to a whole bunch of different areas in my life. And it's why, like, you see successful guys who start a business, become successful, and then they do it in a whole bunch of different areas.
Yeah.
It's like they have enough momentum in their life that this one little tiny thing gave them the momentum that they need to do this and this and this. It's part of like, if you look at, what's his name? He was a founding father of ours, Benjamin Franklin.
Yeah.
Benjamin Franklin, if you go and look at what he accomplished in his inventions, incredible. What was his foundation? He had a list of virtues that he carried around with him his whole entire life since he was like 12 years old on. And one of them was waste no time. And like, he just had these list of virtues that he would, so that became like, this is who I am. Yeah. This is the type of man I am. This is what I do. And he started really small, right? Like just memorizing those virtues. And then pretty soon he applied that principle to science and he applied that to investing and he applied that to teaching and he applied that to industry, all these areas of his life. And it's like, oh, he started a college and he invented all the bifocals and all these other things. He helped in the Revolutionary War and help, like do all this stuff because he had a system for learning and for growth. And it started very, very small in his life. I think the same thing is true for us men. Like, I want every guy to stop and to just write down these 5 areas of your life. You go through your marriage or your relationships, right? Your finances or your business, your relationship with God, your physical health, and help me. What's the other one?
Friendships? Or is that under relationships?
Whatever. Go through the areas of your life.
There are 5 categories. Fill them out.
Yeah. And think through, how am I doing in these areas? Is there any place that I'm becoming passive in or that's ruling my life, that I feel powerless in, really?
Yeah.
And that's the starting point to begin to go, okay, I want to take control in my life. Now, how do I do it? A great way for you men, a great activation would be to literally go get the Tiny Habits book. I got mine on Kindle, so I could just read it right now. That's how I did mine. And begin just to read a page. Get it on Kindle, just read a page, 1 page every day. That's probably 4 minutes of reading.
Yeah.
That's all you have to do. And from there, just start the process of learning how to develop habits.
Yeah.
Become a man that knows how to develop healthy habits. That's your statement. That's your powerful statement. I'm a man who knows how to develop healthy habits in my life. And then you can begin to crush that passivity in your life because, okay, I don't know, like for me, a year ago, my wife and I started to think through like, okay, I don't want Bethel Church to be my sole income. I actually want to make enough income that I don't have to get a check from Bethel Church at some point. But I don't know how to do that, right? And so we started with like, well, what if we did a podcast?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's a great idea. Before we ever do a podcast, let's actually sit down. So we went on a retreat, her and I did by ourselves, and we wrote down every single idea for a podcast that we could think of.
Mm-hmm.
And we put them on a piece of paper and we just created it. Like, okay, this now I'm not like, it's overwhelming if you think I have to do a podcast topic every single week.
Right.
And I have to do 2 every single week. And so but we got a whole list of, okay, these are all, and this is a series that we could do. And then it was like, oh shoot, still feels overwhelming because we don't have any artwork. We don't even know what to call it.
Right. Yeah.
So it's like, well, what would the next step be? Let's see what everyone else wants us to call it. That's how I figured out Dates, Mates, and Babies with the Valentines is everyone else named it. And it was like, okay, we have that. And to me, we just did it step by step. I found someone to do the artwork. We found someone to do the music. We found someone to help us learn how to film. And it was like, I know that YouTube's, awesome for our future, but it honestly just felt too overwhelming to go like, okay, and we're going to do audio and we're going to do YouTube.
Right.
And so it was like, oh, let's just do what we know we can do consistently every single week. And that's how we started. Yep. I think we all love the story of the home run. We all love the story of overnight success. It's just not realistic for our life.
Yeah. I think of Moneyball, in terms of home run, the movie Moneyball, where he goes, oh, actually, let's just focus on, instead of we have these guys who are these big wow players, the all or nothing players. And instead, let's get people who get on base. If we get more bases, we get more runs.
Yes.
And this is, I think of my area of passivity, avoiding any kind of hard conversation. And it started where I'm at now. I work in HR, which is a great place to have hard conversations. And I'm actually really good at having these hard conversations now. But it all started with, part of my homework to myself was when I'm getting my hair cut, they usually did like a washing. And she would go, how's the temperature every time? And I would say, good, every single time, regardless of the temperature. So my homework for myself was to say, can you make it a little warmer or make it a little cold? I had to ask her to adjust for me.
Yeah.
That was one tiny step to having a hard conversation, because that was difficult for me. Some people would be like, oh, that's no problem. You have to find out what is a little step for you. Then what I had to do is when somebody had an opinion on a movie or some show, I had to have a different opinion because I was terrified of doing that. And so even if I liked the show, they're like, oh, I love the show. And I go, it's pretty good. And I had to sit in the discomfort of
their
that
disapproval.
moment. Yeah.
That's funny. So for me, it was actually the first time that I had to really face and start building habits that I can remember was after my divorce. I met with Danny Silk and he said, hey, your inability to have needs and to share we're a lot alike, and to share what you really want and to set boundaries around that you're going to create the same type of marriage that you just got out of.
Wow. And
I was like, oh crap. And so I was dating Lauren at the time, and I had to start thinking through, what do I really think about this, and tell her. Gosh, it was so uncomfortable, but I did it little bits at a time. And that's what helped me to create a marriage that's happy and healthy today. Is she doesn't even have to think about it. She just tells me what she thinks. Probably Jenna too.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
But for me, I had to consciously develop that skill set, and it was really tough. Yeah. So guys, take our advice. All right. Small step, just the small step of going and ordering the Tiny Habits book or download it. If you're struggling in this area, look at the 5 main areas in your life: your finances, your business, your relationships, relationship with God, your health, physical health, emotional health. Look at these areas in your life and begin to assess, how am I doing in these areas? Am I thriving? Am I not? And why? And then you can start to use the tools that we've talked about to help you grow in those areas. So
that's good.
Aaron, thank you very much for coming on. Listen, guys, if you want to hang out with Aaron and get some of his insight and his help, he does take clients. So you can go to
zintsquad.com, ZINT squad.com. And that's where my wife and I house a lot of our stuff. You can find her habit lab. You can find coaching, one-on-one coaching that I do. My wife and I do couples coaching as well. So we take clients there.
Yeah. And Aaron's awesome. So
thanks, man.
All right, man. Have an incredible week. We will see you next week on the BraveCo podcast. Hey guys, thanks so much for listening to the BraveCo podcast. If you like this podcast, would you please rate it, review it, leave us a great comment. And if you like this episode in particular, share it with your friends and family. That helps us to spread the word. Guys, stay brave. We'll see you next week.